You're out of order. You're out of order. What does that mean? Well, I can tell you right now, there are so many people that don't understand sequencing and the order of, like, if we're talking about the language, like the syntax of a sentence structure, meaning if you switch the words around, it could be the exact same words, but it's a completely different experience. So I know Tony Robbins used to talk about this all the time. He was talking about something like Johnny ate the dog or the dog ate Johnny. He was like, well, I feel bad for Johnny either way, whether he's getting eaten or he's eating the dog. But the bottom line is, or I think maybe he said the dog bit Johnny. I don't know. So the point is, though, if you switch those two words around, you switch the dog and Johnny around, boy, you change what happened in that experience. It's the same thing when you're training or when you're setting something up in life. You can design things to build momentum, just like Jim Collins talks about with that flywheel. And in training, think of it this way. If you decide, like, let's say you're gonna go out and you're gonna go for a bike ride. Now, what if you try to start off in the top gear? Well, like the highest gear. That's going to be really hard to get some momentum, to get leverage on that, to be able to move it. Now, what if you start off in the first gear and then you gradually build up to that? Even if you're going up a hill, you might be able to get some reasonable leverage on that crank, and then you can actually get it going, get it cranking, so to speak. So in training, it's the same thing. It's the same thing, just like the flywheel. It's the same thing, literally, just like a bike. So when you're starting off in training, you got to think, what is my setup? What is it that I'm looking to do? If you're going to do a shoulder movement, then I need to make sure that my shoulder is flexible and also stable so that it's able to do whatever it is that I want it to do. Then I got to think about, I don't have to think about it, but the trainer needs to think about the firing pattern, the sequence, the order, the syntax of this, what's going to happen. And if I don't get it right, I'm not going to get peak performance, or I'm not going to get there as quickly as I could. And I'm probably not going to make the right types of advancements and adaptations that I could. So it's really quite simple. But you find that not just the sequencing is a problem, but also the appropriateness of the action. Here's an example. You could do all the right sequencing, but if you're not picking an appropriate action that applies to whatever it is that you're trying to enhance, here's a for instance. I have plenty of athletes that are basketball players and volleyball players, which means they need to be able to be quick and basically a front and back direction linear, but also, more three-dimensional side to side as well. That's extremely important. Not only is quickness important in change of direction, but also their vertical. So their vertical is extremely important. Now, these are all, for the most part, fast twitch situations. Now, if you take some of these people and they have this old school mentality of, like, I'm gonna go out and do these long distance runs to get in shape. What kind of shape do you think you're going to be in? Are you going to be in the shape where you look like a basketball player or a volleyball player, or are you going to look like a distance runner? And I can tell you, if you just look at the shape of the body, and I'm not saying seeing is believing, but there's a lot that you can see, and there's a lot of truth to what you can see. When you look at a basketball player and you look at a volleyball player, they do not look too similar, for the most part, almost to each other, but also to that distance runner. And the difference is you're going to need some fast twitch, explosive type of muscle fibers in order to do what's called upon to do in basketball and volleyball. So does it make sense to go out and go for a 10, 15 mile run? So when I try to talk to our athletes and I say, hey, listen, you can pick some sports that complement each other to try and find out and discover yourself where you are, where your fit is. For instance, if you're doing a lot of long distance events and then you decide you want to play volleyball and basketball or one or the other, that's okay as you're developing. But once you get to the point where there's an appropriateness to make a decision to move more towards one or the other, because you can't enhance both at the same time. It's just It's not possible. So once you get to the point where you got to decide which one am I really going to focus on, and you can still keep doing the other one, but you need to prepare more for one than the other, then at that point you got to decide, am I going to get better at this distance piece, at this muscle endurance, this stamina piece, or am I going to get better at this explosiveness piece, this power, this maximum strength piece? Because it's a very, very different situation. They're on the same pole, but the differences are literally polarizing, because one will not exist to the exceptional level with the other one present. So you kind of have to let go of one thing in order to capture the other. And there's a sequence that comes before that as well. So sequencing and the specificity of your training, super important. I hope that you're looking at that when you look at your training and the things that you regularly do and what you really want to accomplish. Have a great day, guys.